Hi, my name is Justin Shatwell. This is my code review for my Capstone project. Um, I am going to split this code review into three major sections. The first is I'm going to introduce you to my artifact. You can see I have it up in the emulator. I'm going to explain a little bit about what it was supposed to be, show some of the functionality. In the second part, I'm going to go through the code, show how it works, show the things that definitely need improvement, and the things that can be cleaned up. In the final part, I want to talk more substantially about the major changes I want to make to this app in order to meet the requirements of the different improvement areas. And this artifact is going to be used for all three of the different improvement areas. So let's start. We can see the app is running here in the emulator. The purpose of the app was to be an app that would display like event listings. Now, it doesn't really make sense as that type of app because, this was more of a teaching tool, and there are a lot of things in there just to show that the student, me, was able to do those things, not because it would appear in this type of app. For instance, it has a username, password, login screen for a cell phone app that is just showing you events that you're interested in. That wouldn't be password protected. Um, but at any rate, more on that later with the changes I want to make. So I believe I already have an account here. Log in. Oh, I had to create account. There we go. So this screen loads dynamically with all of the events in the database. This is a fresh copy of the app, so there aren't any. So we'll hit create event. We got an event title, uh, say gallery opening. This date defaults to the present date as the minimum starting date. And then we'll say it starts at 12:06 in the afternoon. Create event. And there it is. And we can do second one real quick. Say dog grooming happening in February at 1 p.m. From here, you can click on an event and get some options. So get notifications. The idea was for this app to send SMS notifications when the event was coming up. That was not fully implemented. The app currently requests permission to send SMS messages, but it doesn't actually implement tracking the event times and sending the messages. Um, so that does nothing. Update event will just take you back and let's say instead of dog grooming, it's dog washing. And we're gonna say change that and change that. Now it's dog washing. And also possibility to delete the event, and there it's gone. So that is basically the app in its entirety at the moment. It met the requirements for the class, but I feel like it comes up short in a lot of other ways. I'm going to stop the emulator here, get a little bit more screen space for the code. Okay, so now to review the code as it is. You can see here This is laid out pretty well. This is largely supplied by Android Studio. It has a section for Java code. This was written in Java, not Kotlin. And then it has a section for uh, the layouts, which are XML files, as well as the values, which are also XML files. The app structurally is already in a model view controller architecture. With an Android app, the view is largely handled by XML files. So let's go ahead and start by taking a look at one of these. So in the code here, um, this top bit is essentially saying what type of layout to use. This was just well, it was a constraint layout, but it's fairly vertical. And then each one of the things within the layout is either a button or a field or some other type of widget. Um, okay. In this case, yeah, we had a couple of edit views. That is where the user was able to enter their password and username. We have the two buttons to create a new account or log in. And these two text views were error messages that would pop up. They are hidden by default. Um, also, there are themes applied to some of these, and themes just similar to with CSS and HTML, you can put a bunch of style codes under a key name and then attach them to various resources. So these are the styles as is. The first big glaring mistake is, aside from the name saying what it's connected to, this is not at all documented. These There should be some more context about the use of these themes, what buttons they're going on, what pages they're going on, that kind of thing. Um, on the same note, we go back to activity main. Again, this is not documented at all. It needs kind of an introduction to what this page is, and then it also needs at least some description here of what each one of these is. There's a little bit of self-describing code with the ID name, but I mean, you have to look for that. It's not immediately apparent. It would be much better if this was documented with comments. Another improvement that can be made here is um, best practice with one of these Android apps is to actually save strings, or not to put in literal strings like I have here. Android text account already exists with that username. Instead, you go to this XML file and you're essentially declaring like a constant for that. And the idea behind this is that by doing it this way, you make it easier to translate the app into other languages. Instead of having to go throughout the entire code, you just go to the strings XML and you translate right from here. And that way you don't know you haven't missed anything. So this was an area where I kind of half implemented the best practices. So in some situations like here, I did use the strings XML, and in other cases I didn't. This was strictly because I was rushing. Um, so the other layouts in the for the view part of this, very similar, same mistakes, no documentation, only half implementing that. Also here in create event, yeah, um, same issues. I want to bring up the event grid just because this I handled the layout differently. So with an Android app, the view can be handled either exclusively with XML or it can be handled with a combination of XML and Java. And the reason why you do that or would use the Java is to make a more dynamic website. So this page, it's the activity event grid. This is where it shows the event listings. And obviously, I don't the app doesn't know what the event listings are before you create them, so it can't be a static page. So it must um, build that page dynamically. And that is done here in the event grid. Now, this is the first of the Java pages that we're looking at. Um, and this is the section, um, this onCreate. It's the method that's called when the page comes up. Here's the code where it goes through, um, it gets a list of everything in the database, converts them into a local event listing, and then builds the page off of this. So one of my improvements, one of my, I think for the design portion, or no, for the algorithm portion, is I want to move things more in this direction. None of these pages need to be strictly XML. A lot of them can be more dynamically created and not just for the contents of the page, also how the contents are, or how the objects on the page are arranged. Right now, it only shows uh, listings and really buttons, anything else, in a vertical column in um, in portrait mode. If you flip the phone into landscape mode, it doesn't do anything. It just stays in portrait mode. So one of the improvements I would like to make is to um, implement landscape uh, orientation for the app and also make a more dynamic, fluid um, layout that relies a little bit more on the Java. So let's move over to the control. This is main activity. So this is the page that pops up, the user password page. Um, Off the bat, again, there's a documentation issue here. I should have a header that explains what this is, when it was last updated, all of that. In terms of like best practices with variables and such, I feel like I did a good job there. All of my variables are named in ways that makes it very clear what they are. Um, Here. So the app uses two databases. One is a username password database. The other is an event listing database. These are both handled by SQLite databases directly on the phone. These are not connecting to anything outside of the app. So here, when the page comes up on this on create, a few things happen. Um, One, it initializes all the buttons in the fields, and then connects the functionality to them. Then we get into the text change listeners. This is to make sure that you can't hit enter if a username and password haven't been put in. And then, um, yeah, that's generally what this page does. So before jumping over to the database side of this, I just want to go through this code and show some things that could be improved. Documentation, definitely. I'm not saying what this does. That's not acceptable. Um, since we're out of the XML, um, it's okay to use strings, though this is actually here. We can delete this right now. This is a testing string. Um, that doesn't actually need to be output to the log. Proceeding along. This is the section that asks for SMS permission. This happens if permission has not already been given, so it really only happens the first time the app is loaded on a new machine. It'll ask a couple more times if you deny it before finally giving up. Um, this code works. It's a little difficult to read, but I don't know that it could be greatly improved. This is JavaScript being a wordy language. Um, Down here we have the methods that are attached to the buttons. Um, in this case, it's it um, gets the text from the two, checks to see if the username password pair is in the database, and then lets it in or shows that the password was wrong. And kind of same thing here, checks to see if this is to create a new user, looks at the name and password, checks the database to see if there's already a user password pair, and if so, sends an error. If not, creates the new one and launches into the next screen. So let's take a quick look at the model, in this case, the user database. So again, this is a SQLite database. Again, in terms of naming variables, the setup of the code, I feel like that is done well. But again, documentation is scant. This is where we first set up the database. So that is fine. But I did notice when I do things like check user, you have to get an instance of the database anytime you use it and then close it again. So I do a good job about opening and making sure the resources are closed. I don't have a try catch here, or rather, because this is Java, a try with resources. That is a very clear mistake in an area that can definitely be improved. So I'm going to definitely implement that. Um, yeah. Um, the second database, the event database, is basically the same, set up the same, has kind of the same errors. Again, you can see I didn't use uh, try catches whenever I'm opening this up, and that needs to be resolved. Um, oh. So event is just a standard Pojo. This is the way that the app works is within the app itself, it uses just a Java object for an event um, that has all the attributes applied to integers or strings. And then when it's saved to the SQLite, it's broken up and yeah, each individual part is put into its own field in the SQLite. And the controller builds events and takes events apart. So, not a lot to see here. This is, again, very standard. I have getters and setters, um, and essentially a toString, and that is really it. Again, in terms of best practices, I'm very happy with the code itself. Um, this does need to be better documented, but um, there's no glaring errors, and ultimately the code does work. And event grid, okay, we've looked at that. And options is just a couple of buttons, as in the other, again with the same issues. Very scant documentation, but otherwise, code that works. Now I'd like to move on to the third part of the code review, which is where I discuss more of my more substantive changes for the app. Now, I think for this, I'm going to go ahead and spin up the emulator again. So while that's loading, so I would like this to actually be more akin to an app that someone would use. And for an app that lists events, let's say the idea that I have is there is a museum association in New England, the New England Museum Association, that has over 100 member museums. And they're always looking for ways to better advertise and promote their museums. So I'm thinking of this as like an app that an organization like that would use. And they would make the app available to their members to load events onto, and then this gets pushed out to fans of museums and that kind of thing, cultural travelers, anyone who wants to be in the loop for new gallery openings, temporary exhibits, that kind of thing. And ultimately, they could, uh, see all of the events happening in their area, or follow different areas, or follow individual museums and access the events that way. So the biggest change is that the app needs to get split into two parts. So right now, the big thing that this app does is create events. It doesn't make any sense for the user in this scenario to be creating events. The events should be created in a different application that is available to the museums that are hosting the events. The user should really only be seeing the events that other people have put up. So I would take out the create event aspect of this and put that into a very simple website. I'm not going to get fancy with the website. I'm going to focus on the app, but essentially just a website that has um, basically this functionality that then connects to a database and give it an API so that the cell phone app can connect to the API, download any new events that it doesn't already know about, add them to the SQLite event database. I'm going to keep the local event databases, but just have them occasionally make a connection to the website. The website will notify them of any new events that have come up since the last timestamp of its access. And then the app downloads those events, puts it into the local database, and then serves it to the user. So that is the fundamental idea of the changes I want to make to this. So to cover the areas of improvement in terms of software design, I am implementing this architecture change of separating this into both a cell phone app and a website, and facilitating the communication between the remote database and the local database. From an algorithm standpoint, a lot of that is going to come in the form of the changes I'm going to make to how the layout is generated. So there's going to be a lot more logic for how to make events, like we see, yes, here in the event grid. We're going to have dynamic layouts. And then the second area of algorithm improvement is going to revolve around management of the local database. There'll be, it'll need to periodically search its own database to look for events that are have already passed and delete them. And it also needs to manage the connection to the remote database to let it know the last time it was updated and get these new events in. And if I am able in this project to also implement searching by location, that would be an algorithm as well, figuring out distance from current location to each of the events to show which ones should actually appear in the app, though that might be one too many things for this particular project. I haven't gotten my feedback yet on my proposal, so if it needs to be simplified, that is what I would cut. And finally, from the database perspective, obviously there is the connection between the SQLite databases and the remote database, but also I'm going to expand the database a little bit. Right now it is very simple. Let's look at the event one. So right now it has just a name, and then month, day, year, hour, minute. I would like to add a string field for like an event description. And then the more complicated thing is I would like to store an image for each of the events. So that'll likely be saved as a bitmap. And that is not something I've implemented yet, so that'll be a good new skill to learn. But yes, in the end, the goal for this project is to build or an app that can communicate with a centralized server to gather information and provide it to users in a useful way. I believe that this project will cover all of the required improvement areas, and yes, very much looking forward to getting started. Thank you.